It's probably said in almost every supercar video, hey, we just got the ultimate supercar in. But we did just get the ultimate supercar in.
I kind of want to disagree, but I can't disagree. Everybody that's come up and looked at the car is just instantly drawn to the car. And then when you look at the specs and you see, you know, W16, 16 cylinders, 4 turbochargers, 8 liters, 1,500 horsepower, you just can't argue with that sort of performance in a car. But what's really cool about this car and what gets me fired up is the fact that the Divo relates back to Alberto Divo, who was a famous race car driver for the factory back in the 20s. And you're talking almost 100 years ago. That's what gets me fired up. And when you do a little bit of homework on Divo and Bugatti back then, the Type 35, it's incredible how many races they won. The Type 35, they're probably their winningest race car ever. They won 1,000 races, over 1,000 races with the Type 35. They set 47 world records. They won the Formula One championship in 27. They won Targa Florio 5 years in a row, 2 of which Alberto Divo won. The B's and C's, they were supercharged back in the day, and that's kind of where you start looking at, it's really cool. They were 2 liters and 2.3 liters, depending if they were a B or C. They had big root superchargers, but today they love the idea of forced induction. It's not a supercharger, it's 4 turbochargers, and that's really, you know, the performance thing is what this car is all about. It's not about top speed anymore, it's how fast can it go around a racetrack. There's so many things they had to do to get this car 8 seconds a lap faster around Nardo than the Chiron. Think about that, 8 seconds a lap. I mean, it's incredible what they did to get it to go that fast.
So the horsepower is roughly the same as the Divo as it is on the Chiron, but to get 198 more pounds of downforce without radically changing the look of the car, that's what's most impressive about this car. Let's start at the nose here. I mean, for starters, what catches your eye is this giant big splitter on the front. A lot of people think that downforce comes from the air pushing on top, but it's actually the suction underneath. And if you reach your hand underneath it, it's super curved. It's not just a sharp front end. So they extended the front splitter, they added this carbon piece here. So then they added this relief here, so all the air that was packing up here, it gave it a place to go without getting caught in the front wheel.
The other thing I like, and again, going back to the Type 35, and I mean, it's the quintessential Bugatti grille.
It's classic,
It's
yeah.
the grille that makes you think of Bugatti, and it really looks like that Type 35, the horseshoe grille. The other thing that I really like, and I'm not sure if there's big aero in it, is the lights. They've totally changed the lights. They've got this kind of horseshoe-shaped light up here, and then the main lights are in here, and again, they got a bunch of reliefs for the air to go through.
Moving on here to the vents, again, it's not the downforce that these are creating by the air hitting at the top. It's actually sucking air out of the wheel well, creating suction and downforce for the car.
You know, they've gone just crazy. You look at all the carbon on this car, and I guess the car's lighter, that was part of the...
I mean, you'd hope with all this carbon that it was lighter. It was almost 100 pounds lighter, this car, than the Chiron.
They've done trick little things, like the wiper arm is carbon fiber. I mean, they're saving ounces, but I guess when you're trying to get 100 pounds out of it, you gotta shave it off everywhere.
Super innovative design, again, for the Aero is all the air that's trapped back here, it gets sucked out through the door. And if you open the door, it becomes obvious the air comes through the rocker and then sucked out through the door here with the hole in the door.
Because of this, they also had to change this sort of famous C that's in all the Bugattis from the Veyron to Chiron. They've actually compressed the C, so it's a little sleeker looking. The Chiron and the Veyron have this giant C here, but they couldn't do that doing all the side skirt aero, both front and rear. I think it's a sleeker look, and I think that it really differentiates this car from the Chiron is that whole side piece.
So all the air that comes across the roof is collected in these giant nacoducts here. So it sucks the air under here and puts it in the exact location that Bugatti wanted it to hit the rear wing at. Probably the most obvious aerodynamic feature on the car is this giant center fin. I mean, the thing looks cool, but it also creates huge side force, keeping the rear end glued to the track. For the Divo, they changed up the design on the wing. They split it right here and they increased the width by 23%, total of 1.8 meters wide. It's a massive wing on this car. And then you come down to the bottom here, and noticeably, it's a giant diffuser on the car. They increased the size of the diffuser on this thing.
And I think what's also cool is it's given the back end of the Divo a very different look than the Veyron and the Chiron. It's got these funky lights, and when you hit these lights, they just kind of dance and come alive. And the same thing with the brake lights and the turn signals. They're really funky set of lights, but I think they're cool looking, very much like the Aston Martin Vulcan. The other thing that I really like is the exhaust. It's got a really cool quad tip exhaust, but the best part of the exhaust is how it sounds. And again, they're using a lot of openings to get air out from the wheel wells and out of the back of the car. I think the back and the front of this car is just leaps and bounds ahead of the Chiron. Really good looking piece, functionally way ahead, and cosmetically, I think it's a really pretty looking car now.
So I think the most unfortunate design feature on this car is I can't pop the engine hatch. I can't show you the engine. But they have exposed the engine itself. I mean, the pretty covers, but you can't pop it and see the turbos. The engine in the Divo is nothing new. It's the same engine as the Chiron, 1,500 horsepower, W16, quad turbo, 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, the thing is a monster.
And they make sure you know it when you walk up to the back. On that side, it has the W16. On this side, it has the 1,500 for the horsepower. The other cool thing is it's got a 7-speed dual clutch, and if 1,200 foot-pounds of torque wasn't enough, I mean, that's like 3 Cummins diesels. The way it's geared, the mechanical advantage of the gearing gives it just incredible launch power with all-wheel drive, 2.4 seconds, 0 to 60. And I mean, it's got a launch button, and trust me, you need it. When you get on this thing, it is like a rocket ship.
So with the same engine as the Chiron, you'd expect it to do the same top speed. Not the case. The car does 236 miles an hour, that's 380 kilometers an hour. But because the car creates so much more downforce, there's so much more pressure on the tires that Bugatti wanted to limit the top speed of the car. They gave the car stiffer suspension, they gave the car more camber. This car was built not like the Veyron just to go do a mind-numbing top speed, but this car was built and designed to go around the track well.
And I'll tell you what, the reality of it is, when we did the Super Cuda at 208 miles, when I drove the first one of these, we've gone 200 miles an hour a few times. At 236 miles an hour, that is ridiculously fast. And unless you're at a full-on proving ground track, you don't want to go that fast. Or like you said, the loads on the tire are incredible. With that much downforce at 236 miles an hour, you do not want a tire failure. So you got a 20-inch wheel in the front, a 21-inch wheel in the back. You've got these specially built tires for the Divo, and what's really cool is all this needs to be this big because of the size of the carbon ceramic.
Yeah, I mean, come here, look how big these rotors are. I mean, they barely fit inside the wheel. And then if you look behind it, they've got this little finned heat shield, again, to suck the air out from the rotating rotor, and then to get the air out behind the wheel, through the rocker panel, through the door, and out.
So obviously, the entire car is carbon, inside out, top and bottom. They've made everything as light as they can make it. And one of the coolest things is they've taken advantage of the shape and the giant NACDUC on the roof, and they've incorporated that in the paint scheme on this car. It's all a translucent bluey green with a translucent black up the middle, so you can see the carbon, the exposed carbon fiber, and like I says, it carries on that NACDUC through the roof. Really cool look. Guess how much the option is for this paint job? I thought it was a typo when we looked at the original build sheet. 500,000 euros for the exposed carbon with the translucent paint on top of it. 500,000 euros, that's $580,000. It's a couple GT3 RSs just for the paint job. So what's really cool is they have that center fin really starting at the grille, all the way up the hood, all the way across the roof, you know, over the giant fin, but they also carry that in as a styling cue inside the car.
If we go to the interior here, the whole interior is carbon fiber and Alcantara. And then if you look through the windshield here, they used the theme of this dividing line to split the interior in two and give the driver's side one color and the passenger side another color. When you're sitting in the car and you look over and you see this giant crescent here, the design feature here, the curve of it, just, you can't help but think of the Type 57. And as you can see, to save weight, I mean, there are some power options on the seat, but if I want to get closer to the wheel, it's old school. There isn't some big Tesla-style iPad-looking thing here. It's really just these 4 digital gauges and then the analog speedometer in the center. Everything is controlled on the digital gauge here, and you flip between your radio, your media, your nav, your phone, and everything. So you've got all your info and telemetry on the right here. Toggle between tire pressures. You can even run the stopwatch on your lap time. And on the left here, what's interesting, is you can have your mile an hour here, but if you click it once to the left, it gives you your RPM, your tach, matched with your horsepower right there. So that's something neat to look at as you're getting close to 1,500 horsepower. So when you first get in the car, these neat little gauges here, they just look like your climate control, but if you hold the button on the bottom here, it ends up showing your water temperature, oil temperature, and your boost. So unlike a lot of cars nowadays that are just paddle shifters, you can also shift here like it's a sequential. So at the end of all these videos, obviously I've been doing Tom's line. Do you need a car like this? Do you want a car like this? Do you have a line for this?
Nobody needs one of the world's fastest, most exotic, rarest, most expensive, 40 built, stupid amount of money, 1,500 horsepower. Nobody needs a car like this.
But I want one. I definitely want one. Who wouldn't want one?